Welcome to Global Information Security Society for Professionals of Pakistan.
First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Shahzad and Gispp channel for providing this opportunity to share some of the experiences related to Purple Team and DFIR with you guys. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the Zoom client, you can read the instructions on the screen, and mostly all the questions will be addressed in the chat window. And at the end of the session, I'm going to answer these questions. This is my profile. Obviously, we already have a Gispp channel. You can contact me there if any information is required, or I can assist anyway. This is my LinkedIn profile and my email. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science from FAST and master's in information security from NUST. I also hold a couple of certifications from SANS, EC Council, and ELAN Security. And basically, this Purple Teaming certification, I was the 252nd number around the world in when the SANS launched this Purple Teaming course back in 2019. So the contents, the way I've arranged for today's sessions are, first of all, we are going to get through the introduction of red teaming, blue teaming, incident response team, and then where the purple teaming comes in. We are going to discuss a little bit about some of the frameworks that are utilized nowadays actively in purple teaming activities, in IR. I'll give just a brief introduction. Most of you, I believe, are already aware of these frameworks. If not, you can just paste in chat if there are any questions or anything you want more explanation. I'll go through them. First of all, what is a red team? Red team, we already know, basically traditional security till 1 or 2 years back. And even now, a lot of companies are adopting to the new culture, but mostly it is divided into either red team or a blue team. Red team are the guys which usually perform penetration tests. They can be on quarterly, 6 monthly basis, very focused. And at the same time, there can be some incident triggered and other red team activities. We are going to discuss about them later on. The one point to highlight here, we are not going to get into the details of red team, but one point to highlight here is that mostly red teams are under GRC team umbrella. They are not usually very actively involved with the SOC or cybersecurity incident response team, which paves a major gap in this issue. So then comes your blue team. Blue team is usually your SOC team, in which you have a team, usually this either 2-tiered or 3-tiered SOCs, mostly in the region and around the world. In 3-tiered SOCs, mostly there are L1. There is a layer of L1 analyst which monitors for any active threats or incidents, and then they escalate it to layer 2. And if further investigation and advanced incident response and forensics is required, it is further forwarded to incident response team or L3 of the SOC. Okay, so this is mostly the your SOC team. Here comes incident response team. Some companies are operating on the model that incident response team works separately other than SOC, like they are not amalgamated into the SOC. You have SOC analyst, and once a confirmed incident or breach happens, it's escalated to incident response team. And usually, in this case, incident response team, along with the handling incidents and forensics, they usually perform compromise assessments, threat hunting, malware analysis, and obviously at the end of the incidents, they have to submit a technical report. So here comes the concept of purple team. Okay, what is a purple team? Basically, it's an amalgamation of red and blue teams. Usually what happens that every quarterly or 6 monthly, there is a penetration test being conducted, or there are red team exercises, but at the same time, they are not handed over to the reports. Basically, they come in the streamline. Sometimes recommendations are taken care of, sometimes not. So basically, there is a lot of communication gap that is observed between blue teams and red teams. So this new concept has amalgamated in which there are members. They can be from your incident response team. They can be from your red team, or it can be the combination of the both, or it even can be one or multiple individuals from your incident response team who are specialized in the on the red side and blue side both. They come up with different techniques, which I will explain in the slides further. Okay, so what really is done, this slide will be better to understand the scenario. In red team, usually vulnerability assessments are performed, penetration testing, social engineering, these kinds of activities are performed on regular basis. On the blue side, usually they are working in isolation in most of the companies, what I have observed, or the clients. That they are constantly strengthening your security controls, continuously monitoring for any kinds of threats, improving SIEM rules, there are different other ways they are utilizing. And then comes your incident response team. Usually this is what falls under blue team umbrella. What purple teaming is, it's a coordinated activity of your red and blue teams. Means a group of people come together, okay, they plan, they first define the goal or scope that what needs to be done. Then they plan a particular purple teaming activity in which they will simulate or emulate. I will explain further in the upcoming slides. They will either simulate or emulate the TTPs of any threat actor group related to a particular incident, particular vulnerability. There can be multiple use cases. They will simulate the TTPs, and at the same time, the blue team involvement will be right away there. They will be utilizing defense in depth principle. They will be studying the techniques in multiple layers and will try to defend it in the and create new rules or defense techniques, which we will see in the upcoming slides, to prevent these attacks further. So let me familiarize you guys with some of the basic process, incident response, and some of the frameworks. In incident response, basically first the organization needs to be prepared first, so that if any incident comes, you should know what to do. There should be a set procedure, patterns, playbooks. There's a lot of things that needs to be done for that. So in the preparation phase, usually you maintain an asset inventory. You prepare the necessary documentation for so that if an incident happens, that how you will deal with it. Identification is usually once you are prepared for an incident and suddenly there's an alert or you come to know that there's an active breach, you identify what is exactly causing the issue and you confirm that it is a true positive or a false positive. Okay, once it is confirmed as a true positive, you have to perform some kind of steps as an initial containment. It's a very complex procedure and it varies from situation to situation. In some cases, if you are basically an APT group is attacking you and you take some initial containment action, like let's suppose you block only one IP address. He will remain dormant for some time. It's possible that he's already spread to multiple systems within your organization. And later on, he can for some time, let's suppose 1 or 2 days or 1 or 2 months, he can come to dormant state, and later on he can utilize his C2 infrastructure to again start attacking or basically exfiltrating the data. It depends upon his objectives. So this containment procedure should be very well thought, not immediate right away. First you should confirm it's a true positive, then you should completely perform the investigation and see to which extent they have penetrated your network, identify the complete IOCs, then you will again come back to the, basically there is a cycle. I don't want to get into too much details because there are more interesting things upcoming. Then after this, you have to come towards the eradication part. You have to eradicate the malware completely from your environment, recover your assets back to the original state, the way they were before. If there was a service disruption, you need to come up with the backup servers and make sure everything is in place. The most important thing is lessons learned and recommendation. Lessons learned and recommendations part is usually not followed by the book. I've seen the delay in the implementation of recommendations, or which causes the biggest trouble in you may be infected later with the same mechanism which APT groups are currently utilizing. So for this lesson learns and recommendation parts, I will suggest one thing whenever you are handling an incident response activity. Try to come up with the two kinds of recommendations, short term and long term. Short term, which can be implemented immediately, and long term, which are usually the architectural changes and those kinds of things. Really, if the report goes to the executive and they see that basically you have all of the recommendations, they will see 4 or 5 that they are long term. Usually they take it into the cycle that maybe it will implement it in 6 months, 8 months. So you need to basically give the importance, prioritization, along with the short term and long term division for this. This is David Blinko's pyramid of pain. The whole purpose of showing it to you guys here is that whenever a TTP group, whenever an APT group is attacking you, their TTPs are the most important asset they have, because whenever an APT group attacks an organization, they usually do not change their TTPs very often. If you will discover their techniques, let me give you an example. Let's suppose if there's an APT group that only attacks on Sundays, he use a particularly crafted mechanism of Word documents, and he usually keeps on registering multiple domain names, and through them he is sending you these phishing emails. So the more complex things you are going to identify by particular TTPs, the more difficult it will be for them to change, because they cannot go in a single day, re-registered a lot of those things, come up with a new tool or payload they have devised for the attack. So if you are focusing on the topmost layer, it is the most beneficial. Hash values, IP addresses, domain names, network or host artifacts, these are some things that can easily be changed. If you will change a single keyword within an executable, your hash value will change. IP address, you can always switch from one server to another. Domain name, similarly, host-based artifacts. Let's suppose if you are currently dropping, an APT group is currently dropping an executable in system 32, later he can drop the executable in some other folder. I'm just giving you a rough example. Tools is something challenging. If they are utilizing a particular C2 framework for their activities, and you identify that and block it at multiple layers, multiple techniques by that C2 framework, if you are blocking those, this is something that will be challenging for them to change. Next thing is cyber kill chain. I hope most of the people in the cybersecurity background are familiar with it. Cyber kill chain, we are going to follow two models that are usually being followed around the world. One is cyber kill chain and other is MITRE attack framework. If for cyber kill chain, it's very simple. Whenever somebody, an APT group or an attacker wants to attack your organization, first of all, he will do some reconnaissance activity in which he will go for multiple platforms, such as social media platforms. They will search for your employees' email IDs, their other information, press releases. There can be a lot of ways they can recon and identify. One of the most suspectable thing that we have seen a lot of times is that usually being a cybersecurity professional, obviously you have to maintain your profile on LinkedIn or other platforms. And sometimes employer mention there the exact tools and technologies they are working on, which gives a little bit introduction about the organization, what they are doing. Once you are done with the reconnaissance activity, then there comes the weaponization part. Yeah, blue teams cannot do anything in this phase, because in weaponization phase, you are basically building a payload to attack or to infiltrate the organization, and which payload will be delivered to the organization's digital assets later on in the delivery phase. Once it's delivered to the victim system, let's suppose if a phishing email has been received, he clicked on it and an employee clicks on it, his systems gets basically exploited. It can be vulnerable. It can be, there can be a lot of fears. User can be tricked into giving his credentials. Once his system is compromised, then there comes the installation phase in which the actual payload is executed on the system after basically the payload is installed on his system and the C2 communication is initiated. After the C2 communication, basically there are actions on objectives in which means that, let's suppose if he has already landed on a target server and he needed the credentials of the user, or credit card data was stored there, anything can be there. And action on objectives would be he will search within the environment for that particular data of interest. He can zip it and exfiltrate it. This is an example of actions on objectives. Okay, usually data exfiltration falls under this part. And one other thing, there are many variants of the cyber kill chain. I don't want to get into too much details, but once, let's suppose he has infected a simple endpoint, he needs to literally move to the other endpoints, or he needs to identify the server, domain controller, targets of interest. So he will start searching again for the in the environment, and again he will have to deliver and exploit the payload in that particular server till he reaches his objective for which he was doing the activity. So MITRE attack framework, I hope everyone is already aware of it. Okay, so it is basically a framework like this, which will give you, which has divided in an amazing way the TTPs of APT groups. These are mostly the real world scenarios in which, like you can see that for the initial access, execution, persistence, privilege escalation, what kind of techniques are being used. And once, let's switch to the actual website. One second. Yes. Okay. So let's go to MITRE attack. So this is basically the official website of MITRE attack framework. A lot of useful references you will find in the last slide later on. Okay, so basically these are certain techniques like initial access, execution, persistence, privilege escalation, and what exactly in this particular each and every phase, what kinds of TTPs are being used. Like if you will click on only this one, like drive-by compromise, there will be a certain tools, there will be certain APT groups attributed to it, like APT 1932. These are different APT groups around the world. They are utilizing these techniques to reach the organizations. These are mostly based in the, if you will go into the references, like this one is based on the Palo Alto Threat Research Report. So most of these techniques that are mentioned here are real world scenarios. They are not just by the book techniques. One interesting thing I want to show you that even we will utilize later on, if you will go here to the matrices, okay, and you will go view on attack navigator. This will basically open this in Google Docs kind of sheet. You can export it to Excel also, and you can export only a particular layer. Like if you want to, there's a particular APT group that is attacking you, and you identify a particular TTPs that are being used by them, like drive-by compromise, they're using creating or modifying your system processes, doing these kinds of techniques. You can basically create a layer above this Excel sheet. I'll show you how. Like let's suppose I will select drive-by compromise. I can go here. I can change the color. This is very important to understand right now, because during the purple teaming activities, and especially during the adversary simulation or emulation activities, you are going to be heavily using this particular Excel sheet for the techniques that you will be targeting. Okay, so like there you observed a network scanning and there was a drive-by compromise in your network. So these two techniques you can take. There are different ways we will see in the upcoming slides that how we can utilize them. And also you can create your particular layers here, like a particular layer, I can name it as simulation. So Later on, you can export it and import it again. I don't want to get into too much these details right now. So this is my attack framework. Coming to the C2 metrics, it's developed by a SANS instructor, Mr. George. I recently took a course, SANS Sec 564. It's a good one on adversary emulation. Basically, you take an APT group and you emulate it completely within your environment, and then later on, defense in depth, lesson learned and recommendations. So whatever C2 frameworks you are being utilized, some of them are in Kali or other operating systems. And this provides a very extensive overview of each and every C2 framework, most of them out there, the good ones, along with every little teeny tiny detail, like whether they are utilizing API, Windows, Linux based, how they operate, okay, what kind of C2 channels they are utilizing, either TCP, HTTP, SMB, and in the end, basically MITRE attack mapping is there or no. So this is just to familiarize you with the C2 framework, C2 metrics. Okay. Upcoming next, how can you perform purple teaming activities? Purple teaming activities, I've divided it into 3 different categories. First is tabletop exercises. Second one is incident or vulnerability based scenario. And third one is adversary emulation or adversary TTPs emulation. What can you do in tabletop exercises? First of all, you can identify different real world scenarios for simulation. Okay. Like you can take a single phase of cyber kill chain. You can, first of all, the most important thing in all these 3 exercises is that you have to define the scope, the persons that are going to be responsible and that will carry out these activities. Mostly these persons are going to be from your IR team, maybe a member from your red team, and someone you can be included from the SOC layer 1 or layer 2, the monitoring team. Okay, so this kind of combination usually works best for these kinds of activities. What you will do here, you can come up with different kinds of scenarios. There are 3, like if you can come with a single phase of cyber kill chain, like just the delivery, or there can be multiple correlated attacks like the complete end-to-end scenario, and there can be an APT simulation, like you can take the complete techniques that are being used by a particular APT group. You can simulate them. Let's suppose that this is happening now, just phase by phase. And once you are done with it, obviously, and you will be able to check your preparedness. And in a very short period of time, maybe if you plan and do this activity every quarterly, you can come up with different ways, or even this activity can be done on a bi-monthly basis also. You can come up with a lot of ways in which you observe that there are already loopholes, some configurations, or some techniques you can think about. These are just the tabletop exercises. We are thinking about a simulation, like 3 subject matter experts in one room thinking about, let's suppose this particular kind of attack has happened, what we will do to prevent it, what kind of technologies we are utilizing, what we can do on IPS layer, what we can do on host-based IDS layer, antivirus, EDR. There are a lot of technologies. So you can think about different scenarios and come up with the recommendations and lesson learned for this. This is incident or vulnerability scenario. I'll give you one practical example. Like nowadays, recently there was an F5 vulnerability that was actively being exploited in the wild. And despite there was a workaround that was released temporarily till the patch was available, some people managed to bypass even the workaround. So in that case, you will have to come up with the defense in depth principle. Okay. How can you do that? First of all, you can always go to the Twitter. Let us take one example. What was that? There was an F5 vulnerability 2020. Okay, so let's suppose this particular vulnerability was being exploited. Okay, we can take this particular vulnerability. I'm just giving an example. we can go on search for it on Twitter. There is always hashtag whenever there is vulnerability released. Now information security community has spread all around. So like you can always get the up-to-date information about what's happening, like this one, seeing mass exploit scans for this vulnerability coming from a particular IP address, what kind of technique they are using to attack. So you can come up with either snort signature, or there are a lot of other ways you can come up to prevent from this kind of attack. If this is being exploited, you can write your custom signatures. If there is a file or malware based attack, obviously you can come up with Yara signatures and others. We will discuss these things later. Packet crafting, if you want to replay an attack, obviously burp suits, KP, there are a lot of ways you can craft a packet and you can test. Automated scripts, I remember when this vulnerability was released for one of our clients, we went to Twitter, we searched for that particular CV, and there was a script there that was posted on GitHub, which used to check if you will give it an IP address or range of IP address on which your devices are hosted. It will go there and search whether this vulnerability is present in your devices or not. So basically it will try to exploit. If it's exploited, you will get a response. So this is incident or vulnerability or scenario based. Now let's come to the adversary emulation part. In adversary emulation, what you do, like let's suppose you take an APT 29, 28, any APT group. Like I already discussed before, you go to the MITRE attack framework. You can map all the techniques that a particular APT group is using, or you can come up with a blog post. Like you can take any malware as an example. Okay, like let's suppose there's a press release by FireEye. There's a press release by threat intel from Palo Alto regarding a particular malware. You can take the particular strings and see what techniques they are utilizing. You can map all those techniques there, which techniques you are going to target. Or even in MITRE attack framework, there are APT groups already. Basically, their techniques are there. They are linked, like I just showed before. So you can utilize that knowledge. You can plan an activity. Okay, let's suppose 5 or 10 techniques we are going to take into consideration. Then you can switch to the C2 matrix. You can see these techniques, basically these threat actor group, which C2 frameworks they are utilizing. What are their TTPs? You can map them. You can define the responsibilities between red teaming, blue teaming, your SOC, that from the detection and attack perspective. You can carry out the emulation, and in the end, there will be lesson learned and recommendations. We are going to discuss a few tools about host and network-based forensics. Just let me drink a bit of water. From a network forensic perspective, we have a few things which includes log files. Log files can be from your firewall, IDS, IPS. Your SIEM basically really injects this, your access logs from your web servers. It can be PCAP, NetFlows. Once you get hold of these files and you come up with an activity, like there's an APT group targeting your organization and you have artifacts in the form of these things, you can come up with different kinds of rules. We'll discuss this one by one later. Let's discuss about the network forensic part. First of all, we have PCAPs in which you can utilize Wireshark, TCP dump, and T-Shark. I'd like to share some of the experiences, like from Wireshark. Even if you are opening 1 GB file or above, it will not open. Usually the tools will crash. Wireshark is not capable of handling this GUI variant. So you can always switch back if you want to search for something and for something to T-Shark or TCP dump. TCP dump in Linux, along with the combination of bash scripting. Okay, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the basically like Windows shell is like batch files you can create. In Linux, you have a bash scripting. In bash scripting, you can scrutinize what payload you are looking for, or what, if there are particular strings. There are particular TCP flags. Basically, if you can go to this Wireshark documents page or TCP dump tutorial page, the ones that I have mentioned here, there is so many examples and so many things out there to learn from. In network forensics, basically, The second thing, first of all, you can look at PCAPs, that are network packet captures. The second thing that was initially developed for the network administrator to detect network congestion and other issues within the network is NetFlow. But recently it is also being utilized by cybersecurity professionals, incident response teams, to identify if there is any malicious activities going on within your environment. What valuable information you can get from here? You can get the source IP, destination IP, what protocol is being used. If you are utilizing TCP, there are a couple of flags that can be even used for exfiltration, or you can see a pattern in them. Source port and destination port really gives you a lot of information, like what kind of traffic is flowing, like it's HTTP, HTTPS, HTTP is port 80, HTTPS at 443. If there's SSH traffic, you will see it's port 22. So if you observe any suspicious connection, which should not be allowed by default within your company, if from outside to inside you see a port 22 connection from an unknown IP address, this is something that needs to be looked at. From NetFlow data, even you can come up with you can map the destination IP with the DNS resolution, which will give you a particular list of URLs that are posted on a particular IP address. And if you suspect that this IP is being blacklisted, or from threat intel source you come to know. So these NetFlow data can be utilized for threat hunting. One thing is pertinent to mention here is that the NetFlow data is usually carried out after some regular intervals, like if a router is configured to collect NetFlow data, it usually there are two components, NetFlow collector, and it goes for the processing. So NetFlow collector collects data after every 5 minutes. Whatever sessions are currently established for the past 5 minutes, it will take the snapshot. You can take, like you can see in my screen, there is a slide. So for the 5 minutes, it can take a virtual snapshot of whatever the source destination IP address, protocol, source destination ports, along with some other metadata, and forward it to the centralized engine for long-term storage. So it's one good thing is NetFlow data is by default built in most of the devices, and it can give you a lot of information. Like, let's suppose there are sessions that are getting established every Sunday, which is not a working, every Saturday or Sunday, which is not a working day. You see a lot of connections or huge amounts of data being transferred. This is something that needs to be looked at by your IR team or detection team. So it's very helpful. From network forensics perspective, like let's suppose I access the website here, dunianews.tv. So if you have to perform network forensics, or you are doing a purple teaming activity, you have to collect the artifacts at multiple layers, which can be your system, local system on which you are performing the activity. It can be from the network side. So let's suppose if you get web access logs from the server itself, or if you have the complete PCAP, you will have the complete request header and what's going within that request and what response you are receiving. So one of the most interesting features to look at here is the user agent. Usually if somebody within your environment is utilizing Kali or some other random user agent, which is not normal, not regular, you have not seen it, you are based on the known normal, then this is something that needs to be looked at. Regarding writing, let's suppose you performed the purple teaming activity, or you performed a replication of a scenario, like let's take the F5 vulnerability, and you want to detect that activity over your network. Like even if the patch is not released, you want to detect if in your environment any requests are being received from outside related to this particular vulnerability. Snort is a very good option. You can easily configure and tap a server on the behind of those devices. Okay, it's very simple. I'll just explain one Snort rule, how easy it is to write. Like if there is you observe any TCP traffic from your home network to an external any external network on HTTPS ports. Snort is not basically, it can work only on the single stream. Like, let's suppose if I'm browsing only one website, if I want to correlate the activities, like I first send one of my systems is sending malicious DNS query outside, and then I access a particular website. These are two different stream of events. For that particular kind of detection or correlation, we can use Bro or Zeek. Currently, it is known as Zeek, and it's an open source network security monitoring tool. It supports many application protocols like DNS, FTP, HTTP, a lot of other protocols. Along with it, it also supports IPv6. I know a lot of companies are currently adopting to IPv6. So it can be used for tunnel detection analysis. And the most important thing here is that let's suppose there are multiple files that are being downloaded or uploaded from your network. Zeek or Bro creates log files for that, in which the IOCs list is being maintained. And you can include any MD5, any SHA, anything that you think is malicious. And if it will find that particular file flowing in or outside your network, it can detect it and alarm you. Both of these tools, even if let's suppose there's an incident response activity you are involved in, and there are already packet captures available there, you can have your own rule set and you can execute them on those PCAP files also. It's not necessary that it needs to be actively in line on the data. If you already have the PCAP files, you can maintain your IOC list or TTP list. You can hunt for those TTPs in these logs also, in Bro logs, and also you can replay a PCAP on snort rules also. The most important thing I forgot to mention is whenever you are configuring snort, even during an IR activity, just make sure that these configurations are done. These are very helpful. Let's suppose if you home network should be 10.0.0 or 192.168, whatever you are utilizing within the organization based on the PCAP information, this needs to be set up. External network will be any other network other than home network. And secondly, let's suppose there is a DB server that was compromised. So you can configure, there are specified snort rules, and they will work in good and efficient way if you will configure these basic parameters. They are in the snort.conf file, which is there when you will install it, you will see it right away. Okay. From host forensics perspective, host-based artifacts, we have a lot of artifacts. I'm not going to spend time on this slide because we are a lot of more interesting things to cover. Okay, host forensics, let's focus on memory. Let's suppose you have performed triple teaming activity and you have compromised a system. Now, for defense in-depth principle, you have to create signatures at multiple layers. So you need to first understand the malware completely, or that what activities are being performed on the endpoint. How will you do that? For Windows, whenever a malware is executed, the first thing usually the IR team does is to capture the memory. Unless basically you have to decide this. If you have an EDR platform, EDR already captures a lot of information about the processes, but capturing memory, it's not like the complete memory will provide you a lot of more details also, like the complete URLs, registrations, what has been done. And it also varies from EDR to EDR. In Windows, as per my experience, WinPMM or Belkasoft RAM Capturer are one of the best tools out there. And you can do this using Mandiant Redline. If you are using a Linux system, you can capture the memory using Line. From memory analysis perspective, we have volatility, Redline, bulk extractor. Okay, so these are a couple of tools. I'm just going to give a brief introduction, or cannot go in the complete details of each and every one. So let's suppose if you have you have to perform the memory forensics, what you need to look for. First of all, you will search for within a memory if there are any particular processes that are of interest to you. Let's suppose there are a lot of plugins there. If we talk about volatility, PSCAN, PS3, that will give you the complete description, what the parent process was, what the child process was. The best go-to place for these things is the SANS posters. Even I follow them during investigation sometimes. The Hunt Evil poster, Memory Forensics poster, and DFIR poster. These three posters are the most valuable and should be the go-to for each and every IR team member. Then you have to check for the child processes. If let's suppose you identify a particular rogue process, what activities it did. Let's suppose you received a phishing email. You clicked on that particular email and it redirected to you to a malicious process. Or let's suppose if your Outlook was already was itself compromised, there must be a child process that will be created either by your browser, either by your Outlook agent. Something has to be done or triggered, which will be the child process of this original process. It can be command prompt, which can launch a payload, which can download a payload. Then this particular, after this payload is launched, there are certain associated DLN launch a payload, which can download a payload. Then this particular, after this payload is launched, there are certain associated DLLs with any rogue process or service that is injected. Then you have to, the most important thing you have to look for is the command line. That what URL, what parameters, what is being passed into the command line when a process is being launched. Then comes the network connection. It's very obvious from multiple layers, from network layer, from host layer, you can detect if there is any malicious network communication. Malicious code injection, it's something, there are plugins like Malfind. These kinds of plugins can be used always to detect if there is any malicious code injection. It's not necessarily always a true positive. Sometimes it's quite possible that you receive the output in it's usually in assembly language, you have to decode it, what it means exactly. Dump malicious code or suspicious process. Always, if you're finding a malicious code in the memory, you have to dump and investigate. Most of the times, IR teams are not capable of doing this, and this is forwarded to a reverse engineer or a reverse engineer or malware analyst who does this job for malicious code study. Mr. Jad, I would like to stop here for some questions till now. There are more interesting topics coming further. If we have any for now. Are you able to hear me properly? My voice, it's clear?
Yeah, it's fine. It's working fine.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks. So any questions? No questions up till now?
Yeah, I got one question, Imad. Let's say if you mentioned that if you have an EDR technology, if you don't have an EDR technology, how are we going to collect and do the forensics?
It's basically, if you don't have an EDR technology, then first of all, host forensics, there are two parts. First is the memory side, and the second one is divided into hard drive, which is basically the data residing in your hard drive itself, which can be your C drive completely. So if you don't have an EDR in the memory, you can find these command lines whenever the process is launched. And coming back to the host forensics, let's go through all of these, the ones that are mentioned here, and you'll see. But from the command line itself, you can get it from the memory. And one important thing to mention here, there is a tool called bulk extractor, and there is a paid tool also from Belkasoft, which is Evidence Center. They both are very good in extracting any information related to, basically if you give it a particular string to search for, it will extract all the IP addresses, URLs, even the PCAPs that are residing in your memory. If you still have a PCAP in your memory for any particular activity, it will extract and provide you them also.
But you can also use Sysmon and OSQA, right? For if you don't have EDR.
Yes, Sysmon and OSQA, that will be covered later on in this host forensic section.
Okay, fair enough.
In the event logs part, you will see in the next slide. Actually, it's the 30th slide, next one. Okay, so I think we should proceed further. It's already 6:45. So Okay, so in host-based forensics, there are a lot of artifacts. Once you have the hard drive image, you can acquire it using FPK Imager, or there are a lot of tools out there. Or if you even received a direct hard drive of the host, you can utilize it with the right blocker in place. And after proper hashing, if you have to present it to the code, I will not get into those details. So in the hard drive itself of the system, first of all, you have event logs, which is the basic thing and one of the most important thing. Usually Event Log Explorer, use even the Windows built-in event viewer. It's also very good. But Event Log Explorer is my go-to for these kinds of activities. Event logs give you very teeny tiny detail of information, even the basic ones. If somebody is logging in remotely, there is a particular logon type. If somebody is accessing SMB file share, you will know. Or if your system is utilizing these things, you will know. Coming to Sysmon, Sysmon is a very amazing tool, okay, by Microsoft. It gives you 8 different kinds of logs and very teeny tiny details about whatever is happening in your system. Even it can map the network connections, request, everything. But there is one point for utilizing it into the production environment. Okay, that if you will, let's suppose, install it on a domain controller or on a server which is being utilized for hosting a website, it can become very slow. Okay, so there is a processing overhead, and if you have the necessary hardware to take care of the Sysmon kind of software, it's a very good tool. And obviously, like you mentioned, we can always forward these logs or Windows artifacts directly you can push them to your SIEM. If you don't have the SIEM, you can put on Elk Stack, and you can have a very nice visualization search. That things we'll get into detail later on. In the host forensics, there are lots and lots of artifacts. If something has happened within your system, you can always detect. There must be some traces that attacker has left, especially in the Windows 10, because Microsoft is proceeding rapidly towards the good security frameworks. Like, it has developed a lot of tools and mechanisms to prevent security breaches. So I'm just quickly going to go through these some artifacts here. User assist history, basically any programs that are launched from your desktop or your launcher, like from the taskbar, they usually are kept here in your registry. Basically, registry is an amazing catalog of information. Then in Windows 10, you can run the software you used to run in Windows XP, in Windows 7. So for the backward compatibility, there is an application compatibility cache that Microsoft maintains, and it can give you a lot of valuable information about about the binaries that are being executed based on the compatibility cache. Windows background activity monitor, I did not know about this artifact earlier, but I was investigating one system, and certainly I came across it. So later on, I took basically SANS certification, so I came to know about these artifacts. But this one is very amazing. It will provide you the complete path of the executable and its last execution date or time. Even if, let's suppose, it is removed from your endpoint. Like, let's suppose there is a self-destructive malware that performs its task, does data exfiltration, and after that removes itself from the system. You can still go back and track this executable time and last execution date and time. And one more important thing to mention here, nowadays, wiping tools like CCleaner and other tools have become very common to clean the traces of execution by APT groups. And if any such activity happens, like they are using any kind of wiper or any other activity, not wiper, sorry, any kind of tool to remove their traces, even a good tool like CCleaner does not perform this task since 1 or 2 months back, I checked. So this activity was not being cleared by that tool also. So you will always find if there was an executable that was executed in Windows 10 system here. Coming to the lists, there are some there are some usually programs that you launch from your system to increase the efficiency. Microsoft keeps the shortcut of these files. Basically, it's called the jump list, and you can always track back what tasks were executed or what files were executed by a particular user. Okay. So recent apps, you know, Microsoft has moved towards the apps-based architecture. Like there are certain applications. If an application is being used in your Windows 10 system, you can track using this recent app path in the registry. Prefetch, it's a very amazing artifact. Whenever an executable is executed inside your environment, prefetch files are there is a prefetch file that is created for each and every executable. Let's suppose I launch Adobe Acrobat Reader. There will be a prefetch file that will be created for it, okay, in the Windows prefetch, and you can always go back and see when it was run. It also stores a couple of last execution times when were it executed. So let's suppose if there is a malicious executable that launches every time you turn on the system, you can correlate. I'm just giving an example. You can correlate the time of login with the time of execution. There are a lot of other ways like auto runs, or there are other applications. But if there is a kernel level rootkit, other thing, or some other advanced malware which is hiding itself. So there are a lot of artifacts. Maybe if it is hiding itself from 3.4, you can get it from the remaining artifacts. And I was not able to include everything in it, but there are a lot of other things such as master file table, any malware and executable that is being executed, even in incognito mode, anything, you will always find in the master file table, directory listings, file system journaling. There are a lot of different artifacts at the file system layer, which we cannot cover today because due to the time. But these artifacts you will always find what was downloaded, what happened at a particular timestamp. There are a lot of things that you can look at. And okay, sorry, Windows 10 timeline. Windows 10, like if you will press Windows tab, Windows maintains the timeline of activity, that what was happening, okay, and what was happening at a particular time, okay. So this is being saved here in activities cache DB. It is one of the most amazing places. Like let's suppose I launch Internet Explorer, I visit a particular website, I download a particular file. Everything, including URL, what you opened, what you did exactly, is saved in this activities cache DB. And it's very amazing. I would recommend everyone to just look at it. A lot of artifacts in Windows 10 are new, especially it's moving towards Office 365, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive. There are a lot of things happening that are now cloud-based. So there are some artifacts for it that are stored on the local system, as well as some are stored in the cloud. So from the local system, if you come across a particular incident response activity, you want to collect these artifacts. There are no out-of-box solutions in some of these cases. So you have to write your own scripts, and I'm going to show you some tools. That's why I'm in a bit of hurry. And then that will help you a lot with these kinds of things which are still not known yet. Shortcut or link files, any recent files, Office recent files that are open currently. It will give you a lot of metadata about these particular files. I've mentioned a particular Andrew case, the guy who wrote Volatility. It's a link to his webcast, which is, he has mentioned some very amazing artifacts for tracking anything that was executed within your Windows 10 systems. Because it's new, their team usually leads these kinds of research for Windows 10. So it's very amazing webcast. I would recommend everyone to view whenever you have time. Coming to hard drive forensics zone identifier. Usually in most of the cases, whenever an attack happens, a file or payload is downloaded from outside or from the internet. So Windows 10 has a very good artifact. You can find it in MFT layer also. There is also a particular tool, it slipped my mind, I utilized it 2-3 months before for collecting the zone ID. You can launch it through CMD, even you can launch it remotely through an EDR solution. If zone ID is 3, it means that a particular file was downloaded from the internet. Coming back, okay, so we have all these kinds of artifacts. We have a lot of network-based things. So how can we detect it? How can we basically implement the defense in depth principle while doing purple teaming or incident response activities? So I'm going to show you a couple of tools or techniques through which we can implement this principle. First of all is Yara rules. Yara rule is, you can consider it like, if you are seeing on the screen, there is a slide. If Yara rule is like this, that it will statically read the file, and if you will tell it certain conditions. If that are met, it will trigger that, okay, your rule will trigger. In this slide, if I will mention some keywords such as structure, strings, condition, host, if all 4 are present, trigger an alert. So it means that I defined 4 strings and I told the engine that if you will find all these 4 strings, and let's suppose I give another example that, and if the resolution is 1920 into 1080 of the screen, or you can mention the file size in the real world scenario, that if the file size is less than 36 KB, trigger an alert. So Yara rules are very easy to read and write. You can open any file in hex editor, come with a sequence of, if you have identified a malware and you want to hunt in the environment for that, you can always search for you can open a file in hex editor, search for a particular strings or mutexes that are unique to that particular malware, place all of them here, come up with a condition like if these strings are present and the file size or is this, trigger an alert. Even you can do hash based and other searches also. So there are 4 ways. First of all, you have to, you can insert the metadata. You have to mention the rule name here. One second, rule name, then you have to mention the strings, then you have to mention the condition. You can also include a metadata field here, which will not be processed by your engine, but it will give you the context, which campaign it was and how it was being used. Another way to do is the Mandiant IOC. Open IOC, it's a tool by Mandiant. You can utilize a lot of basically, it's comprised of 3 things: metadata, references, and the definition. The definition is the main one. In the metadata, it's just the name and some basic details. In references, you can refer to a particular threat campaign and save it for the later on, and also for threat intelligence sharing. And in the last one is the basically definition of the rule itself. Let's suppose in this particular case, if I say that if there is an evil.exe present, or I can say that these 4 DLLs are loaded by this evil.exe, then this is something that needs to be looked at. You can couple your IOCs. Let's suppose if you are simulating a TTP, TTPs of an APT group, you can take make a set of IOCs and you can supply it to Mandiant Redline. Mandiant Redline is an amazing tool. It will give you everything from file system metadata, registry, event logs, your network information, even the network sockets that are currently being created, everything. So you can give this particular file that you will create in OpenIOCs to the Mandiant Redline, and it will search within your memory, within an active system. And if it finds any hits, it will trigger an alert for you, or you can analyze them further based on these inputs. This is an amazing website. I've been utilizing it since 2013 start. Their utilities are amazing for IR activities. Let's suppose you come across a system and it's compromised. You want to do some kind of investigation. It will give you each and everything. Even you can view the cookies, internet history. These are simple utilities. You just have to download and double click on it and it will execute. We will try one that is. USB DView, it's a simple utility. If let's suppose you come across a case in which you suspect that the USB device was plugged in and the malware executed within the system, you can always use this device. It will tell me any USB device that was plugged in within my system, like what was the name of the drive, what drive letter it was mounted to, what is the serial number. And I'm speaking from the experience. I came across MBR based malware, which was residing at the bootkit layer of some of the USBs, and on one of my client system, it was infecting other hosts. So this particular software and the correlation of the serial key led me to the actual device that was infecting the systems whenever plugged in. So it's all their utilities are amazing. I would recommend everyone to go and just have a look at them. Okay, where it goes. Okay, a few more slides. Kansa, it's a PowerShell based incident response framework. You can utilize it for a lot of things, but today I'll give you the tutorial not of Kansa, of CAPE. CAPE is basically, it's called K-Roll Artifact Parser and Extractor. Okay, it's an amazing tool. Whatever we used to do, whatever is mentioned like in the SANS posters, timelining, a lot of things that we used to do manually, this particular tool has automated everything for us. Whatever artifacts we have mentioned in before, this particular tool will parse most of these artifacts and will give you in the CSV forms. And this tool has been written by Eric Zimmerman. I hope everyone in the cybersecurity biz knows about him. It's amazing. I'll show you the live demo rather than here. Let me see if there's anything. Okay, so here comes how to utilize everything. We will see this later. Two things are very important, I would say, if anyone with cybersecurity background or who is in incident response or even red teaming should have these in his system by default ready. There is a PowerShell script. If you will search on Google, you will see get Eric Zimmerman tools. You just have to download this particular script. You will execute it. It will give you to the up to date all the tools by Eric Zimmerman. Whatever artifacts we have mentioned before, all these artifacts are parsed by these tools. Basically, they are parsers for each and every one. Okay, well, we can take one example. What's the time? But we are already 7:07. Is that okay if we continue for a little bit more time?
Yeah, sure. It's really good. Yeah, please continue.
Okay. 1 second. This is the particular, let's suppose, let's take one. This is SANS poster. I would recommend you all to go to SANS website. Okay, their posters and their cheat sheets, they are amazing. If you will just even read their cheat sheets and SANS posters, especially the four I mentioned, DFIR, Hunt Evil, and memory forensics, and the logs one. These four will give you an amazing insight about incident response. Okay, let's take one example. One second. No, CDE. Sorry. Let's try We will not try all because I have to let's not give it the complete directly. Let's suppose I want to see if there is a particular executable that was executed within my system or not. Okay, so we will go for, let's suppose, a Adobe, any interesting one. We can go for any one of them. Basically, whenever an executable is executed in your system, there is a file, prefetch file that is made. Okay, and just let's push enter. Sorry, I initially gave the directory. For a file, you have to give -f option. So basically what DLLs were loaded whenever this file was executed, whenever it was executed, I initially mentioned a particular use case that let's suppose every time once you reboot a system, I'm not going to go into Event Log Explorer. It's very basic and everybody can, I think, do this. Plus this session is not focused on that. But you can correlate a particular timestamp from there and you see if at the particular time this was executed or not. So similarly, all these tools are here. You can parse each and every artifact which is available manually using these tools, Eric Zimmerman tools. Now, how to automatically use everything? Let's come here. I have already downloaded the Cape because I did not want to waste my time of session during this. Otherwise, you can just search for Cape download. This is their official website. You can download the Cape there. This Eric Zimmerman's an amazing guy. He writes tools for fun, which are being used around the world. Okay, so this is their framework. Let's execute and see. There are two versions of Cape. One is simple Cape and one is G Cape. It utilizes two different kind of modes for execution. One is modules and targets. Okay, we will see them now. First, I will execution so that things are clear. Then I'll also explain there is a command line version of it. You can, using EDR, API of your EDR solution, you can bulk deploy it around your organization and get the outputs you want from it. First of all, you have to select it's very, very simple. You have to select the target options. What is target option? Target means you have to mention here a source. Source means it can be C drive, okay? It can be a particular image you have collected from a system, like FTK imager. Let's suppose if you have taken a hard drive image, you can mount it using, for Cape, it is recommended to use excess data image mounter, I think. Yes, you have to utilize it. There are some issues with the compatibility. So you can mount the image simply using excess data. Unfortunately, I have clients' images. I don't have one of my own. I'm going to execute on my own hard drive. So you have to select a particular drive on which you want to execute. In real case scenario, this will be the hard drive that you have either connected through a write blocker from your forensic system, the one which you are investigating, or it can be executed through EDR on the live system itself. Like let's suppose if you have an EDR such as CrowdStrike, Carbon Black, anything which can provide you with the shell. Okay, we will see how to execute through EDR, but on the GUI one and this, then you have to come up with a drive. For now, I am creating a simple folder here in Cape that is output. IR analysis. Okay, so this particular folder I have created. So target source is your infected system or possible suspected system. Target destination is your you will contain the data that you will collect from the actual endpoint. Now there are a lot of basically targets that are already written. Don't get confused. Target means that behind each and every target, there is a different softwares, and there are scripts that go and collect that particular information. It can be about Windows, it can be about event logs, it can be related to browsers data like Firefox, Chrome. And let's suppose if these are certain modules that are triggered, okay, whenever you execute this software. So let's suppose if on the GUI, when I will select this web browser, let's suppose there are two ways. The easy way is to search from here, web. So when you will select the web browser, it will by default collect the web browsing history of all the browsers, not only one. And even if you want to see the code of that particular file, you can double click and you can see what it's doing. Within that particular module, it's collecting Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, and Edge, 4 browsers. So instead of selecting each and every one, I selected this one. We are not going to select on all of them because it's going to take a lot of time. Let's take 2 things, this MFT, and there is SANS has created a module for basic collection, which collects all the basic information that is required usually for an IR activity. It collects event logs, evidence of execution, which we have already discussed, a lot of artifacts. It will collect the file system, jump list, PowerShell. So this is something that you have to go back and do research on your own, but it's pretty simple. It's just click, okay? And there is also a hack to make your life easy. You can copy this particular command line, and even you can, if you place this cape.exe, which I will show you later on here, it's in the main cape folder. It's only 7 MB. You can place it, this one, modules, and your this modules folder on any systems within your organization. And if you will launch this command through CMD, just with 8 MB of files, it will collect everything. There is ways that you can basically compress all the data that you collect, and it will be available for download. Like all your activities. Previously, you used to go collect event logs, web history, everything separately. This will combine everything, put it in a zip file and give it to you. Okay, go and basically do the analysis. And there is one more interesting thing, that if you don't have to present to a court, you don't want anything to be manipulated, then you have to perform the analysis and everything on your own system. By doing this, just keep in mind that this will be a folder that will be created on the actual system itself, unless you are executing from a USB drive or an external drive. So you are tempering the evidence while you are working with it. So it's better if you can do it using an external drive. So coming back to the modules, these are all the parsers that have been written by Eric Zimmerman, SANS instructor, a lot of security professionals around the world, and it's very easy to write it. I'm also right now working on it for some of the things, the cloud-based artifacts like such as you can say see Teams, OneDrive. There are a lot of things for which the parsers are currently not available out of the box. So you can always come up with a solution. You can write a small script, place it here, get it approved by the CAPE team. So let's just do this particular thing. I have mentioned the output folder. I'm clicking on execute now. Okay. This gives this error. Just don't worry about it. How much time did it take to collect everything from my system? 6.9 seconds. Have you ever seen this kind of speed or processing? Even if you write your own bash script. I wrote a bash script for this activities 2 years back, and we were utilizing it for incident response activity on some clients. So it used to take almost 10 to 15 minutes, and same amount of data is being gathered, compressed, and just see the time. Okay, let me press execution is closed. Let's go there. There will be an output analysis folder. Oh no, what's wrong? Did I miss something? I collected on basic collection this. It should work. Let me just sync it with GitHub. Maybe there are some updates through the command lines or things that are not working, but it will collect everything, including your MFT, everything, and it will place it here in your system. Okay, 1 second. Should work. Okay. Yep. Let me save it in another drive, but it should not be an issue. I understand what's the issue. Just give me 1 minute. This user is running with limited privileges. Maybe that's causing the trouble. Yes, yes, yes. That's why we are executing this, we can have discussion along with it because it's going to take a little bit of time. If you can unmute the participants, we can have a good discussion in the meanwhile. If you have any questions, anything to discuss. There's something wrong. It should work. I'm stopping the sharing for a while. Okay, I have to go to my personal user account and I have to get, I see if I have a updated copy of CAPE in my downloads. Clean up and download again with my official ID. So I think we can continue this in an upcoming webcast later on with more forensic tools and other interesting things.
Yes, no problem, Imad. Continue with the remaining whatever we have. We can do one more session for specific these things.
So that's it from my side. Just to compile everything, how can we utilize everything? It's always an amalgamation of the complete efforts, whatever we have, like we've just gone through the tip of the iceberg. Every single slide has a complete history, complete background, a lot of artifacts, tools that can be utilized. So I just wanted to give an introduction about what red teaming is, what blue teaming is, and why is there a need for a purple team, and what kind of purple teaming exercises can be done, what kind of artifacts are there at network layer, host layer, what C2 frameworks can be utilized to emulate or simulate the activities. Always you can map it to MITRE ATT&CK framework. Obviously there can be a lot of documentation of processes and procedures that can be put in place, such as, like, let's suppose once you are starting the purple teaming activity, you have to identify the personals that will be included. You have to plan it. You have to document the TTPs. There are several Excel sheets that are available online, or you can come up with your own, that what techniques you will map, what will be the time frame, and ultimately what will be the conclusion. And one more thing to add there, it's an amazing thing to show to the management of any of your clients or your own company, the importance, because in the small time frame, like tabletop exercises, or just taking an incident response activity, or a particular vulnerability like I showed, like the F5 vulnerability, you can perform the active exploitation, you can implement defense in depth, and you can show the value or output to the to your client or to your own company management that you have gotten from all this activity. So that's it from my side. I'll be more than happy to answer anything that I can. If there is any ambiguities you have observed within the slides or something needs to be modified, just let me know so that I can communicate the updated slides. I had very less time frame to compile everything. So your feedback is highly appreciated.
Guys, if you have any questions, you can ask now. Otherwise, we will end the session.
Yeah, Imad, I have one question.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, I'm listening, please.
Yeah, for example, if I want to test my cyber defense against APT32, which is basically Helix Kitten, okay? So the first question is, how would I get this malware sample, which is exact copy from APT34, okay? And secondly is, second thing, should I create an isolated environment? Obviously, I would be creating an isolated environment. So how would you do this exercise in a corporate environment? Like,
it's first of all, it depends upon what first answering your first query regarding APT group. Whatever APT group you have to, it's very important to have a threat intelligence. Threat intelligence can be three sources. One is open source that you can browse, obviously FireEye, Palo Alto, CrowdStrike, Red Canary. There are a lot of good vendors out there. You can search their websites or Google for any threat reports related to that particular APT group. It will give.
That's fine. My question is, if I want to get the exact sample which is being used by APT34, do you know any repository?
No, you will never get the exact sample. Okay, the repository, the best one is obviously VirusTotal, and you are never going to execute a known malware within your organization. What's the purpose of purple teaming whole is, you will check the technique they are using. Let's suppose they are sending a phishing email. You will send a phishing email, and let's suppose they are using an encoded macros embedded in a Word document with that phishing email. Okay, so once this email is received, you will imagine that, or you will see that that email was first seen on your parameter. Either it can be a firewall or IPS. Then you can think about, okay, it is landing on my email gateway. What particular attributes can I check at email gateway level that are not already implemented? It can be from email gateway perspective. Let's take an example. It can be SPF. It can be DKIM. What is not being validated? Okay. At the third layer, you can see for any particular sandboxing technologies that are in place, if they are detecting that particular kinds of samples or not. What's the configuration at that level? So from there, once it's received, then you can have a Wireshark filter or anything. Like, you will simulate a similar activity or emulate a similar activity. You cannot execute the exact malware sample, even if you will download it from VirusTotal. You have subscription, you have the malware sample. VirusTotal is, by the way, the best repository for that. A lot of samples are immediately available there, but you will never download and execute in your own system. You can execute in your own local VM or in a simulated environment.
Yeah, obviously in an isolated environment.
Yes.
And one thing, have you ever used this atomic team from Red Canary where they actually mapped with MITRE ATT&CK? Do you recommend this?
Atomic team, Red Canary is a very good vendor. They have amazing techniques, and their mapping to MITRE ATT&CK framework is amazing. That's what I can.
So we can use this framework for purple teaming, right?
It's amazing. It's amazing. But I would always map them to initially to the MITRE attack framework, or there are now a lot of other tools. I've been very busy lately. I did not get the time to check. So I think it's SYTHC, SYTHC or something like this. So I'm planning to test it. I haven't tested it, but I think I've heard a lot about it. If you want, you can check about it. There are a lot of webcasts related to that also.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Welcome. Any more questions, guys?
I think let's find out. There's no more questions. I asked before also, and nobody said anything in the chat also. So thank you, Imad. Thanks a lot for your session. It was amazing. It was a very good session. Hopefully let's have more session from you in future, whenever you have time. So thanks again. Thanks everybody for coming. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.